Hello, my name is Dale Flatt. I'd like to take a few moments to show you where we're at with the city's new preservation program for historic cemeteries. They started off doing some work during the winter months when the grass was not growing, and here's just an example. Here is a work order. Note that it's for the Austin Recreation Center. And again, some of the problems with the system as we have it right now is everything is run through Parks Division. All the paperwork is geared for the Parks Division. The requester is a Bridget Davis, and this phone number is not a good working phone number. All in all, they did several dozen of these, and Bridget Davis is not a family member. She's a Parks employee, and she's the one that inputs the data. And so, and the work was requested by our new employee, Isabella Nichols, and you'll see that in a minute. So somebody has to take time to fill out this paperwork. You can see that they asked to reset the MEB of the Margaret E. Burton footstone using pea gravel or angular gravel mix into its place. The footstone had come out of the ground. 4 employees were sent over. I believe these are 4 part-time employees that were hired to help do some of this work. They each billed the city 1/2 hour or a total of 2 hours for completing this task. This is the vehicle they were driving, and they have to track the vehicle usage. They brought a marking kit, some shovels, and some sand. And they reset this footstone. Shane Jones was the supervisor who signed off on it. The footstone is located right here in section 1 of the cemetery. Good job on showing this. Here's the Burton Monument here, the current condition, and here's the footstone right down here. You can see it laying in the ground. The goal was to get it upright again and keep the mowers from running over the top of it or it being a trip hazard. It was to be set in a hole with a flat back and pea gravel angular mix set approximately 50% of the monument height in the ground, set at the foot of the space. See the photo for location. They just kind of stuck it there, but it's not set in its permanent depth. Here's the piece of paper that started all off is Isabella Nichols. I think is how you pronounce her name. She gave the lot and the other things. This was done by not a customer request, but by the City of Austin. So the City of Austin and the taxpayers paid for all of this work. Normally, the monuments are the private property of the families, and it's the family's responsibility to maintain their property. And again, here's set in the gravel mix. Sunk down 50% into the ground, MEB. And so it's there. You can see it's got some damage to it here. Typically our headstones take a beating with the mowers and the weed eaters. And so this is the job that was done. And again, not a bad job. The guys who did the work built it, 4 men, took them a half an hour, 4 guys to pick up that little thing and put it in the ground. They took with them a marking kit, shovels, and sand. There's no mention of any angular gravel or anything else. So the cost of the taxpayers to set this one footstone was $30. That's just for the labor for the 4 gentlemen to go out and set it. It doesn't include staff time for inputting, creating the documents, or Isabella's time for going out and setting up the job. The second job, done on the same day by the 4 same employees, was to reset a monument in the ground. It is the Sandra Kingston Monument in the ground. And it's the same 4 employees. This is a little bit bigger. They each billed 1 hour. So 4 guys, 1 hour to reset a monument. It is this location right here in section 4, just north of North Street over this way. Here's the monument in question. They take a picture of it here. You can see that it is hand inscribed. We don't know what material this is made out of. Nobody bothered to document that. What is very clear is this broken edge down here at the bottom. The monument is dirty. At no point in this particular job was there a recommendation to clean this monument like there was on other jobs. Isabella set this thing up. And again, it was not a customer request. This is something that staff decided that needed to be done. There was a fencing job happening in this area, and I'm sure she went through the whole area and looked at anything that might have been damaged and wanted to get it stabilized. This was on the ground. It could have very easily been picked up and then brought back. But let's examine on how they set it. This is how they set the stone. So I have a few problems with this. One, the stone is set way too far into the ground. It's set 50%, but this is not how the stone was originally designed to be set. You can see in the background here above the stone, this is the stone wall that is put up by the Doubletree Hotel next door. So this is the cemetery boundary line right here. This stone here is at far more risk in this position than it was before, simply because as the grass and the weeds grow around this thing, weed eaters are going to come through here and they're going to cut the weeds and they're going to obliterate this date. Let's take a look at what the stone looked like a while back ago. This is a photograph from Find a Grave, posted online from Robert Sage a few years back. You can see the old fence line is right here, the old chain link fence. It was up against the fence line. So it was up against the fence line. We have no idea the exact location of this burial within this narrow lot. What you do see here is the stone is clean when this photo was taken. And you see that the breakdown in here, and you see this line right here. This is indicative of a stone that was in a slotted base at one point. Maybe this is marble, it was hand carved, and it was in a limestone base, and the limestone base has degraded over time like so many of them have. Now, staff didn't choose to create a new base, creating a concrete base, and then they could have easily trimmed this off right here, made it flat, and set this monument in a base at this level here, and that whole base would have been above ground, and the historic fabric, this monument here, would have been safer from the lawnmowers and the weed eaters. But as it was, staff chose just to bury it. They didn't clean it, they just buried it at this level. That puts this monument at risk. Again, there's a learning curve for new employees. Some of these people have never worked in cemeteries or this type of historic work before, but this demonstrates the amount of oversight that should be happening as the city takes on these new responsibilities. The cost to set this one monument, those 4 employees each billed an hour, they made $15 an hour. This was $60. Part of our role at Save Austin Cemeteries is oversight to some point. We want to ensure that the city is doing best practices and looking after the historic fabric. In this instance, the city spent $60 to pay 4 employees to set this one monument. This one monument could have been set by a volunteer, or it should have been set aside and perhaps a volunteer asked to create a base for it. And then once the base was done and cured out of concrete, then this monument could have been set into a base and protected for another 100 years. This is a child that died in 1915. Let's take a look at that death certificate. Here's the death certificate that we found online, provided by Robert Sage. And it clearly shows the cause of death. The year is May the 27th of 1915. It does give the parents' names, James Kingston and Ethel Leroy, and where they're from. This young child was 1 year, 10 months, and 6 days old. The family carved a stone and had it placed at the cemetery thinking that it would survive, and it has for many years. I don't have any proof, and I asked for, and the city could not provide me any documentation to where they reached out to the Kingston family, see if there was any survivors, to get permission to try to stabilize this monument. It's not a big deal in this case, but it's important because the city has required that Save Austin Cemetery have the family's permission before we do any task on any monument. They state that it's private property and that we have to have permission. If those rules are in place for a reason, and I agree that they should be, that you can't do any work on a monument unless you have the family's permission, that all the monuments are the private property of the family, then why doesn't the city make a good faith effort to find those families and document that good faith effort? Everybody realizes that in some cases we are 6 and 7 generations removed, and sometimes we have to do what we think is best and do no harm to help save our historic fabric. However, when we bury something into the ground this close, we place monuments at risk. However well-intended, this task lacked oversight and basically experience on behalf of the people who decided what to do, not being aware of the fact that within this first year, the weed eaters and the mowers may very possibly obliterate the bottom 2 lines of this stone.